Every single time you download a file on your Windows PC, something happens that you were never told about. Something quiet, something automatic, something that has been running since the day you first turned that PC on. Your antivirus, the one Microsoft gave you for free, the one sitting right there in your taskbar, the one with the shield icon that makes you feel safe, is watching that file. It is analyzing that file. And in many cases, it is taking that file, or detailed information about that file, and sending it somewhere. Not to your hard drive, not to your desktop, to Microsoft's servers right now in the background, without asking you first. That is not a theory. That is not a guess. That is Microsoft's own documented behavior, written in their own official documentation, available on their own websites. And yet the vast majority of people who use Windows have never heard about it. They do not know it is happening. They have never been told about it in plain language, and they certainly have never been shown how to change it. This video is going to change that. By the time you finish watching, you will understand exactly how Microsoft Defender works behind the scenes, exactly what it is sending to Microsoft servers, exactly what that data contains, and exactly what you can do right now to take back control of your own files. Every fact you're going to hear is verified. Every setting you're going to see is real. Every step is accurate and tested. No exaggeration, no panic. Just the truth about what is running on your machine every single day. Let us start at the beginning. Because to understand the privacy concern, you first need to understand what Microsoft Defender actually is and how it actually works. Most people think of Defender as a simple antivirus. It scans your files, it looks for malware, it blocks threats. That is the version that Microsoft shows you in the Windows Security app. The clean interface, the green check marks, the reassuring your device is protected message. But underneath that clean interface is a much more complex system, a system that has three major components that most people have never thought about. And each one of those components is sending data to Microsoft in its own way. The first component is the local antivirus engine itself. This is what most people picture. It runs on your PC. It uses definition files that update regularly. It scans files and processes for patterns that match known malware. This part is genuinely local. It does not inherently require sending your files to Microsoft. It works from a database of known threats that gets downloaded to your PC. For files that match known threats, the local engine handles everything on device. This is the part that is completely fine from a privacy perspective, and it is also the part that gets all the credit in Microsoft's marketing. The second component is called Cloud Delivered Protection, also sometimes called Cloud Protection or Real-Time Cloud Protection. This is where things start to get interesting. When your PC encounters a file that the local engine cannot classify, a new file, an unknown file, a file that has never been seen on that PC before, Defender does not just shrug and let it through. Instead, it connects to Microsoft's servers. It sends information about that file to Microsoft's Cloud Protection Service. And the cloud service makes the call on whether that file is safe or dangerous. This happens in milliseconds. From your perspective, you just tried to open a file and Defender either let it through or blocked it. What happened in between was a conversation between your PC and Microsoft servers that you never saw. The third component is called Automatic Sample Submission. And this is the one that surprises people the most when they learn about it. When Cloud Protection cannot determine whether a file is safe or malicious just from its metadata alone, it asks your PC to send the actual file, not just information about the file itself. Microsoft servers receive a copy of that file and analyze it there in Microsoft's cloud infrastructure using more powerful analysis tools than what can run locally on your machine. Once they determine whether it is malicious or safe, that verdict comes back to Defender, and Defender acts accordingly. Now, let us slow down on that for a moment, because this is the thing that most people, when they hear it for the first time, immediately need a minute to process. Your antivirus is uploading your files to Microsoft by default, without a prominent notification, without a consent dialog during setup that clearly explains we will upload files from your computer to our servers. It is documented, yes. Microsoft has written about this on their technical documentation pages, but it is buried. It is not what you see when you open Windows Security. It is not what you're told when you set up Windows. The default behavior of Microsoft Defender is to upload files from your PC to Microsoft's cloud for analysis. That is what is happening on your machine right now. And before we go any further, let us be precise about what Microsoft says they upload, because accuracy matters here. Microsoft's documentation draws a distinction between what they call safe samples and other files. Safe samples, as they define them, are files that are considered not commonly to contain personal data. Specifically, they list executable files like .bat, .cr, .dll, and .exe. These are the file types that Defender will upload automatically without asking you when Cloud Protection needs a sample for analysis. For files that might contain personal information, Microsoft gives the example of documents and spreadsheets. Defender is supposed to prompt you before uploading. It is supposed to ask your permission before it sends your Word document or your Excel spreadsheet to Microsoft's servers. That sounds reassuring. Until you dig into what actually happens in practice and into what safe samples actually means. Because here is the thing. Executable files are not empty containers. They are not blank files. Executable files can contain configuration data, serialized data, and other embedded content. Developers know this well, which is one of the reasons that software developers consistently show up in forums expressing concern about automatic sample submission. If you write your own software, your own custom tools, your own proprietary code, that code compiles into an executable. That executable, when it is new and unknown to Microsoft's cloud service, qualifies as a candidate for sample submission. Your proprietary, confidential custom executable code could be uploaded to Microsoft servers. One user on Windows forums described exactly this scenario. They had a machine with multiple PCs running Windows, and automatic sample submission had been enabled on some of them. They realized that Microsoft, through the automatic upload system, had built up a detailed profile of what software was on their machines, including their custom-developed executables. Their exact words were that Microsoft had built a fairly good profile as to what I have on my machines. The user was a software developer. The uploaded executables were their personal work. They were not malware, they were not dangerous, but they were uploaded to Microsoft without that user's meaningful informed consent. And there is a documented real-world case that illustrates exactly why the automatic upload of files to an antivirus company's servers is not a theoretical risk. In 2015, Kaspersky Antivirus, one of Microsoft's competitors, disclosed that they had detected a suite of highly classified NSA surveillance and hacking tools. These tools were later reported to have been taken home by an NSA contractor, stored on that contractor's home PC, and subsequently detected by Kaspersky Antivirus running on that PC. Because Kaspersky, like Microsoft Defender, had automatic sample submission enabled, the antivirus software uploaded those files to Kaspersky's servers, which at the time were in Russia. That is how classified NSA tools reportedly ended up on Russian servers, not through hacking, not through espionage, through an antivirus program doing exactly what Microsoft Defender does today, automatically uploading suspicious and unknown files to the antivirus company's servers for cloud analysis. The parallel is direct and should not be ignored. If an employee at any company, not an NSA contractor, any employee, brings work documents home, transfers proprietary files to a personal PC, or runs work-related executables on a personal machine with Microsoft Defender running, that automatic sample submission feature could upload those files to Microsoft. That is not fear-mongering. That is the documented mechanism of how this feature works, applied to a documented real-world incident from a different antivirus company with the identical feature. Now let us talk about the metadata that gets sent before any actual file is uploaded, because this is another layer of the picture that is important to understand. Before Cloud Protection asks for a sample, it first sends metadata about the file. Microsoft's own documentation lists examples of this metadata. It includes the file name, it includes the file size, the digital signature of the file path, meaning the full path on your computer, including folder names, the URL you downloaded the file from, and behavioral information about what the file does when it starts to execute. Let us stop on a few of those. File name. That could reveal sensitive information depending on what the file is named. File path. That could reveal folder structure that contains information about what you're working on. URL downloaded from. That reveals your browsing activity, specifically what websites you downloaded files from. These pieces of metadata are being sent to Microsoft's cloud service every time Defender encounters a file it cannot immediately classify, even before any sample is uploaded. Just the process of querying Cloud Protection generates a stream of metadata about your file activity that flows to Microsoft. Microsoft's documentation also explicitly acknowledges something important about this metadata transmission. Their documentation for the older version of this service, which was called Microsoft Active Protection Service, originally known as SpyNet, states directly that under the advanced membership level, personal information might be sent, including search terms, data entered into forms, file paths, and partial memory dumps. Partial memory dumps. That means fragments of your system's active memory content. The documentation states this information will not be used to identify you or contact you, but it also confirms that this information is being sent. The current version of Cloud Protection and sample submission has evolved from these earlier systems, but the underlying mechanism, sending file metadata, sending file paths, sending download URLs, and in some cases, sending file samples, remains exactly how the system works today. That is confirmed by Microsoft's current 2024 and 2025 documentation. Now, let us talk about the third major data sending mechanism inside Microsoft Defender, because the Cloud Protection and sample submission story is only part of what Defender sends to Microsoft. The other major piece is something called Smart Screen. Smart Screen is a feature that has been in Windows since Windows 8, and it works differently from the sample submission system, but raises its own distinct privacy concerns. Every time you download a file from the internet and try to run it, Smart Screen checks that file against Microsoft's reputation database. Every time you try to visit a website, Smart Screen checks that URL against Microsoft's list of known malicious sites. The mechanism for how it does this check is what matters for privacy. Research by a security professional and reported by Bleeping Computer, one of the most respected cybersecurity news outlets, showed that when Smart Screen checks an executable file, it sends a significant amount of information to Microsoft's servers. The tests showed that this information includes the full file path of the file on your computer, meaning exactly where that file lives on your hard drive, including all folder names in the path. It includes the URL that the file was downloaded from, and it includes other details about the file being checked. Think about what the URL download information means in practice. Every time you download a file and try to run it, Smart Screen sends the URL of the site you downloaded it from to Microsoft. Your download history, or at least the download sources for any file you try to execute, is being logged through Smart Screen and sent to Microsoft's servers. This is not speculation. It was demonstrated with actual network traffic analysis by researchers. The Smart Screen URL submission mechanism has also been documented to send those URLs in unhashed form. This is a technically important distinction. Google Chrome has a similar safety feature called safe browsing. Chrome's approach sends a hashed version of the URL, a one-way mathematical transformation that allows Chrome to check safety without revealing the actual URL to Google. The hash is compared against a database of hashed malicious URLs. Microsoft's Smart Screen, by contrast, has historically sent the actual URL to Microsoft's servers. Researchers and security experts pointed this out specifically, noting that Chrome's approach preserves privacy better because Google cannot reconstruct the original URL from the hash. With Microsoft's approach, Microsoft receives the actual URL you downloaded that file from. Microsoft's response to this criticism was essentially that the data is encrypted in transit, that it is used only for security purposes and not for advertising, and that this is documented in their privacy policy. All of those things may be true, but they do not change the fact that Microsoft receives a record of what sites you are downloading files from every time you download and run something on your PC. There is also an additional layer to the Smart Screen story that is worth understanding. Smart Screen does not just run when you download files from a browser. Microsoft's documentation confirms that Smart Screen is integrated at the operating system level, which means it checks any file that any application, thus including third-party browsers and email clients, attempts to download and run. So even if you are using Google Chrome or Firefox or Thunderbird for email, when you download a file through those applications and try to run it, Windows Smart Screen is still active, still checking that file, and still sending that file path and download URL information to Microsoft. Before we go further, let us take a moment to talk about a specific group of people for whom automatic sample submission is not just a mild annoyance. It is a professional concern, because this feature does not affect everyone equally. And understanding who it affects most dramatically changes how you think about whether the default settings are appropriate. Software developers are the most obvious group. If you write code, if you create your own programs, your own tools, your own scripts, those files compile into executables. Those executables are almost certainly not in Microsoft's reputation database. They are new, they are unique, they have no history with Microsoft's cloud service. That makes them exactly the kind of file that triggers Cloud Protection's request for a sample. Your source code, compiled into a binary, uploaded to Microsoft's servers. If that code contains proprietary algorithms, business logic, or sensitive internal systems, that is a real data exposure risk. Not theoretical, not hypothetical. The documented mechanism of the system produces that outcome. Security researchers are another group, people who legitimately study malware, who run samples in controlled environments, who analyze malicious code to understand and counter it. They deal with files that are not just unknown to Microsoft's cloud service. They deal with files that are actively malicious. Automatic sample submission in a research environment can cause those files to be uploaded to Microsoft, which could disrupt research, raise flags on their accounts, or interfere with the controlled analysis environment they have carefully constructed. Journalists and activists are a third group, people who work with sensitive sources, who handle whistleblower documents, who run tools designed to protect their communications and identity. Those tools, if they are custom or niche enough to be unknown to Microsoft's reputation database, become candidates for sample submission. The file path that gets included in the metadata transmission could reveal information about the directory structure of their machine, including folders named in ways that expose what they are working on. A folder path that includes a source name, a story title, or a project code is not something that should be sent to any third-party servers without explicit consent. Business owners with proprietary software face the same concern as developers. If your company runs custom internal software, a custom inventory system, a custom client management tool, a custom database interface, that software, running as an executable, will be flagged as unknown by Microsoft's cloud service the first time Defender encounters it on any machine in your organization. The file gets uploaded, the file path gets transmitted, the download source URL, if it was distributed internally, gets sent. All of this is documented behavior, and none of it was clearly explained when your company decided to run Windows as your operating system. Healthcare workers have a particularly sensitive version of this concern. Healthcare environments frequently use specialized software, imaging software, electronic health record systems, clinical tools. These applications sometimes handle patient data. If those applications interact with patient data in memory at the moment, Defender decides to scan them more deeply, or if their file paths include patient identifiers as part of a file naming convention, the metadata transmission from Smart Screen or Cloud Protection becomes a potential HIPAA compliance issue. Microsoft's documentation acknowledges that in some instances, personal information might unintentionally be sent. Now let us go back to the cloud protection and sample submission layer and talk about something that most technical coverage of this topic misses. Because there is a question that naturally comes up when people learn about this system. The question is, if Microsoft is collecting all of this data, what are they doing with it? Microsoft's documentation says file samples are used to improve their threat intelligence. They contribute to what Microsoft calls the Intelligent Security Graph, which is a system that aggregates threat data from across all of Microsoft's services. Windows machines worldwide, Microsoft 365, Azure, Exchange email systems, and more. The Microsoft Digital Defense Report for 2024 states that Microsoft collects more than 78 trillion security signals per day from across this ecosystem. 78 trillion signals per day. That is the scale of Microsoft's data collection operation on the security side alone. Your file samples, when they are uploaded, become part of that signal ecosystem. They are analyzed. They contribute to machine learning models. They help Microsoft build better threat intelligence. Again, this is Microsoft's stated purpose, and from a security perspective, it is a legitimate and genuine benefit to the broader ecosystem of Windows users. When one machine uploads a file sample and Microsoft identifies it as malware, every other Windows machine in the world benefits from that identification. The threat intelligence improves for everyone. But here's the problem. The benefit to the security ecosystem does not automatically make the individual privacy implications acceptable. And the individual privacy implications are real, concrete, and documented. The privacy concern with automatic sample submission is not just about what Microsoft says they do with the files. It is also about what could happen to those files, and that data, through circumstances, Microsoft does not control. Microsoft stores samples from uploaded files in their infrastructure. They retain data from Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, their enterprise-grade version, for 180 days, according to their own data storage documentation. Cloud-based data stored in large centralized systems is a target. Microsoft itself has experienced data breaches. In 2023, a breach exposed email accounts of senior Microsoft executives and government agencies. In 2024, security researchers identified significant vulnerabilities in Microsoft's cloud infrastructure. A system that collects file samples and metadata from hundreds of millions of Windows machines is, by definition, an extraordinarily high-value target for anyone interested in that data. This is why the privacy concern with Defender's cloud features is not the same as the privacy concern with, for example, Windows Telemetry. With Telemetry, the concern is primarily about Microsoft building a behavioral profile of your usage. With Defender's cloud features, the concern includes the possibility that actual file contents, executables from your machine, and in some configurations, all file types, are stored on Microsoft's ServRS and could be exposed in a breach scenario, accessed through legal process, or used in ways beyond what Microsoft's current policies specify. Let us now talk about something that connects Defender's privacy implications to a much broader pattern. Because Microsoft Defender is not just an antivirus program sitting quietly on your machine. On Windows 11, Microsoft Defender is deeply integrated with other Windows security and tracking features. When you interact with those features, data flows in ways that compound what Defender alone is sending. Microsoft Defender Smart Screen is integrated with Windows Smart App Control. Smart App Control is a feature in Windows 11 that blocks applications that are not signed or do not have established reputation. To determine reputation, Smart App Control, like Smart Screen, communicates with Microsoft's Cloud Reputation Service. Every unsigned application you try to run triggers a cloud query. Every application without an established reputation generates a data transaction between your PC and Microsoft's infrastructure. There is also something that happened in late 2024 that almost nobody covered, but that has significant implications. Windows 11 quietly expanded how Defender integrates with the Windows Security Center. Security Center now collects data from Defender and feeds it into broader system health and diagnostic reporting. If you are running optional diagnostic data, which we covered in a previous video, some of the security events and Defender activity logs can be included in what gets sent to Microsoft through the diagnostic pipeline. So you have two separate channels sending data, Defender's own cloud features on one side, and Windows Telemetry potentially including Defender activity on the other. The intersection of these systems means that Microsoft potentially receives data about your security state, your file activity, your download sources, and your application execution history through multiple separate channels simultaneously. Each channel has its own documentation, its own privacy settings, and its own opt-out controls. But most users have never interacted with any of those controls because they have never been clearly told these channels exist. Now here is where this video gets different from most videos about Windows privacy, because what you do about this matters enormously, and what you do depends entirely on your specific situation. There is no single right answer. There are trade-offs, and you need to understand them clearly before you touch any settings. Microsoft Defender's cloud protection and automatic sample submission provide real, measurable security benefits. The block at first sight capability, which can stop malware within seconds of that malware appearing anywhere in the world for the first time, only works because of cloud-connected sample analysis. According to Microsoft's own data, approximately 96% of all malware files detected and blocked by Defender are observed only once on a single computer, demonstrating how targeted and unique modern malware has become. For those unique, never-before-seen threats, local definition files are useless. Cloud protection is the mechanism that catches them. If you disable cloud protection, you lose that capability. Your PC will only catch malware that Microsoft has already analyzed and added to local definition files. You become more vulnerable to zero-day attacks and targeted threats that have not yet been cataloged. That is a real trade-off. It is not a hypothetical risk. Zero-day malware, malware that exploits vulnerabilities before they are publicly known or patched, is a real category of threat that real people get hit by. If you disable cloud protection, you reduce your protection against this category of threat. That needs to be said clearly and honestly. This video is not telling you to disable cloud protection. This video is giving you accurate information about what cloud protection does so you can make an informed decision. What you can do, and what this video recommends, is a more targeted approach, not disabling cloud protection entirely, not leaving everything at default, but specifically addressing the automatic sample submission setting, which is the component that actually sends files from your PC to Microsoft, and understanding the additional options available so you can configure Defender in a way that matches your actual risk tolerance and your actual privacy needs. Here is exactly how to do it. Open the Windows Security app from your Start menu. Once it is open, click on Virus and Threat Protection. Then click Manage Settings under the Virus and Threat Protection Settings section. Scroll down and you will find Automatic Sample Submission. By default, this toggle is on. What it is set to by default is the Send Safe Samples Automatically mode, which means executable files and certain other file types are uploaded automatically, without asking you when cloud protection needs a sample. Toggle this setting off. When you turn off automatic sample submission, Windows will show you a warning message saying your device may be vulnerable. This warning is real in the sense that it describes a genuine change to how Defender works. It will no longer be able to upload files for cloud analysis. But the warning is also written in a way designed to make you feel like you have done something dangerous. You have not done something dangerous. You have turned off a feature that was sending files from your computer to Microsoft's servers without prominently notifying you. That is a reasonable privacy decision. It is the same decision that many technically sophisticated users and security professionals make for their personal machines. Turning off automatic sample submission does not disable your antivirus. It does not turn off real-time protection. It does not stop Defender from detecting known malware. It does not even turn off cloud protection for the metadata-based analysis that does not require file uploads. It specifically removes the mechanism by which your actual files get sent to Microsoft servers. Your local antivirus protection remains fully functional. Now, there is a second setting on the same page. Above automatic sample submission, you will see cloud-delivered protection. This toggle controls whether Defender uses Microsoft's cloud service for real-time analysis at all. If you turn this off, Defender operates entirely locally, using only local definition files. As discussed, this reduces your protection against zero-day and targeted threats. Whether to turn off cloud-delivered protection entirely is a more significant decision than turning off just automatic sample submission, and it depends on your risk profile. For most users, people running mainstream software, browsing mainstream websites, not handling particularly sensitive data, keeping cloud-delivered protection on, but turning off automatic sample submission is a reasonable balanced approach. You keep the cloud-based threat intelligence for detecting emerging threats, but you stop actual file uploads. For users handling particularly sensitive data, lawyers, journalists, activists, business owners with proprietary software, healthcare workers, financial professionals, turning off automatic sample submission is strongly advisable, and you may want to consider turning off cloud-delivered protection as well and replacing it with a privacy-focused alternative antivirus. We will come back to the alternatives in a moment. Now, let us talk about Smart Screen, because addressing it is separate from the Defender settings you just changed. Smart Screen has its own settings, and they are in a different location. Still in Windows Security, click on App and Browser Control. You will see a section called Reputation-Based Protection. Click on Reputation-Based Protection Settings. You will see several toggles here. The first one is Check Apps and Files. This is the Smart Screen setting that runs when you try to execute a downloaded file and sends file path and URL information to Microsoft. Below that is Smart Screen for Microsoft Edge. This controls Smart Screen specifically within Edge. Then there is Potentially Unwanted App Blocking and Smart Screen for Microsoft Store apps. Each of these toggles controls a different aspect of Smart Screen. The one with the most privacy significance is Check Apps and Files, the operating system level Smart Screen that runs when you execute any downloaded file, regardless of which browser you use to download it. This is the setting that sends your file paths and download URLs to Microsoft. You have a decision to make here that is similar to the cloud protection decision. Smart Screen provides genuine protection against executing malicious files and visiting malicious websites. If you turn it off, you reduce your protection against that category of threat. If you leave it on, data about your file execution and download sources continues to flow to Microsoft. A middle ground approach that many technically informed users take is to leave Smart Screen enabled, but to be aware of what it is doing. Smart Screen's privacy impact is different in character from automatic sample submission. Smart Screen sends URL and file path metadata, not the file contents themselves. For many users, the protection benefit of Smart Screen outweighs the metadata privacy trade-off. For users who want to fully minimize what Defender sends to Microsoft, turning off Check Apps and Files removes the URL and file path transmission from the operating system level Smart Screen. You can leave Smart Screen for Microsoft Edge on or off separately. If you use a non-Edge browser for most of your browsing and downloading, and you have that browser's own safety features enabled, Chrome Safe Browsing, Firefox's phishing protection, turning off Edge-specific Smart Screen while leaving Check Apps and Files on is another possible configuration. There is one more thing to address in your Defender settings that almost no coverage of this topic mentions. It is in the same virus and threat protection settings page where you found automatic sample submission. Scroll down further and you will find a section called Notifications. And within Notifications, there is a setting for Get Informational Notifications. This controls whether Defender sends notifications about non-critical events, which can include telemetry-related notifications. Turning this off reduces background activity from Defender's reporting components. Additionally, if you want to go deeper, open the Windows Security app, click on Settings at the bottom left, and look at the Security Provider section. This shows you all the security components currently active on your system. It gives you visibility into what is running and what is connected to Microsoft's infrastructure. Now let us talk about the bigger picture, because there is something important that needs to be said about Microsoft Defender, about privacy, and about the situation that Windows users are in, because it is a situation that deserves honest commentary. Microsoft Defender is free. It comes with Windows. It requires no subscription, no payment, no additional download. For billions of people worldwide, it is the only antivirus they have, and for many of those people, it genuinely protects them from threats they would otherwise have no defense against. That is a real contribution to global digital security. The cloud protection features that send data to Microsoft are also the features that make Defender genuinely effective against modern malware. The trade-off between security and privacy in this specific case is real and genuine, not manufactured. But the way this trade-off has been presented to users, or rather not presented to users, is a problem. Automatic sample. Submission should be something that Windows clearly explains during setup in plain language before it starts running, not buried in documentation, not explained in technical terms that require a security background to understand. Explained clearly and simply so that every person setting up a Windows PC can make an informed decision about whether they want their files uploaded to Microsoft's servers. The fact that this feature has been running on hundreds of millions of PCs quietly in the background, sending files to Microsoft, without most users ever knowing about it, that is the part that is legitimately concerning. Not because Microsoft is doing something illegal, not because Microsoft is malicious, but because the principle of informed consent matters. Users deserve to know what their software is doing with their files. They deserve to be told in language they can understand before it starts happening. The same principle applies to Smart Screen, which has been sending download URLs and file paths to Microsoft since Windows 8. Most Windows users have been using Windows 8, 8.1, 10, and now 11 without ever being clearly informed that every file they download and try to run sends the download source URL to Microsoft. That is over a decade of URL and file path data being transmitted, for most users, without meaningful informed consent. To be clear about what Microsoft says about all of this, they document it. Their privacy statements cover these features. Their technical documentation explains how they work. Microsoft's position is that this is disclosed and that users who want to change it can change it. Those statements are technically accurate. The documentation exists, the settings exist, the opt-out is real. But a disclosure buried in a privacy statement that nobody reads is not the same as meaningful informed consent. A settings page that most users never visit is not the same as a clearly communicated choice. The principle of privacy by default, which data protection frameworks like GDPR in Europe explicitly endorse, would require that these data sending features be off by default, with users choosing to enable them if they want the benefits. Instead, Defender's approach is privacy by configuration, where data sending is on by default and you have to know enough to find and change the settings. What you do now is your choice. You have the information. You know what is being sent and where. You know how to change it. You know the trade-off you're making when you change it. That is what informed consent actually looks like. And you now have what Microsoft's default setup process never gave you. For anyone who wants to go further than adjusting Defender's settings, there are privacy-focused antivirus alternatives worth knowing about. Malwarebytes Premium has a privacy-oriented approach to cloud analysis and offers clear documentation of what it sends. EASET Nod 30 is highly regarded for security effectiveness with a more transparent approach to telemetry. Bitdefender has a strong security track record. None of these are perfect from a pure privacy standpoint. Virtually all modern antivirus software uses some form of cloud-based threat intelligence, but some have more user-friendly controls and clearer disclosure than Microsoft Defender's default setup. If you are making a change, do your research on any alternative before making the switch, and make sure you do not operate without any protection while transitioning. If you found this information valuable, share it with someone who uses Windows and has never heard any of this. Because the people who most need to know about automatic sample submission, about Smart Screen URL transmission, about what their antivirus is doing in the background, those people are not reading technical documentation. They are not watching cybersecurity conference talks. They are people who were handed a Windows PC and told it was protected, and who have been running these features for years without knowing about them. They deserve to know. And now you can be the person who tells them. Your PC, your files, your choice, make it an informed one. Now let us talk about something else that runs as part of Microsoft Defender that very few people know about. It is called the Windows Defender Security Center Reporting Component, and it logs a significant amount of security-related activity on your PC and makes that data available as part of Windows Diagnostic Reporting. Every time Defender scans a file, every time it blocks something, every time it makes a cloud query, every time it submits a sample, all of that activity is logged. The logs go into multiple places. They go into Defender's own protection history, which you can see inside the Windows Security app. They go into the Windows event log under the Microsoft Windows Defender operational log. And depending on your diagnostic data settings, summaries of that activity can be included in what Windows sends to Microsoft through the telemetry pipeline. This means there are two parallel data flows happening simultaneously on your PC relating to Defender. The first flow is Defender's own direct communication with Microsoft's cloud, the cloud protection queries, the sample submissions, the Smart Screen URL checks. The second flow is Windows telemetry, potentially including Defender activity logs and its own separate data uploads. If you have left your diagnostic data setting at optional rather than required, Defender's activity on your machine may be included in the broader data that Windows sends to Microsoft through the telemetry system. These two flows are managed by completely different settings in completely different parts of Windows. Changing your automatic sample. Submission setting does not change your telemetry settings. Changing your telemetry settings does not change your automatic sample submission behavior. They operate independently. To meaningfully reduce what Microsoft receives about your PC's security activity, you need to address both systems separately. There's also something called the Microsoft Active Protection Service, which used to be called Spynet. And the name Spynet is important because it gives you a hint about what this service was originally designed to do. Microsoft Active Protection Service, abbreviated MAPS, is the underlying network through which Defender participates in Microsoft's global threat intelligence ecosystem. When your PC is a member of MAPS, which it is by default, it contributes to and receives from the global intelligence network that underlies Defender's cloud features. MAPS has two levels: basic maps. Membership sends information about detected software, the actions Defender took, whether those actions were successful. It includes computer information like your IP address, your operating system version, and your browser. Advanced Maps membership sends significantly more. According to the documented description of Advanced Maps, it includes the location of detected items on your computer, file names, how the software operates, and what impact it has on your computer. And it explicitly states that, in some instances, personal information might unintentionally be sent to Microsoft. That last phrase, might unintentionally be sent. What does that mean exactly? It means that because the system is analyzing what files are doing on your machine and where they are located, and because those files might have names or paths that reveal personal information, that personal information can travel along with the analysis data, not because Microsoft is deliberately trying to collect your personal information, but because the mechanism of collecting security-relevant data about files can incidentally capture personal data that happens to be associated with those files. This is one of the things that privacy advocates have pointed to repeatedly when discussing not just Defender, but cloud-connected antivirus in general. The collection of security intelligence is not cleanly separable from the collection of behavioral and personal data, because the security-relevant signals are often intertwined with personal context. The URL a file was downloaded from is security relevant. It is also a record of your browsing behavior. The file path a suspicious file is found in is security relevant. It might also reveal something personal about what you are working on or what applications you use. Let us now talk about what happens to your data once Microsoft has it, because this is the question that matters most, and Microsoft's documentation actually gives some answers here, some more reassuring than others. Microsoft stores telemetry data associated with your diagnostic data settings for a period related to their internal processing and service improvement purposes. For Enterprise Defender for Endpoint data specifically, Microsoft documents a retention period of 180 days. For consumer-level data from Defender Antivirus's cloud features, the retention period is less explicitly documented in public-facing materials, but the data does not disappear immediately. File samples that are submitted for analysis are retained and contribute to Microsoft's threat intelligence database. Once a file is analyzed and its verdict determined, the sample continues to exist in Microsoft's infrastructure as part of the reference database used to protect future users. Microsoft's official position on data security is that customer data is encrypted at rest and in transit, that it is stored in segregated infrastructure, and that Microsoft employees do not use it for advertising purposes or sell it to third parties. Their online services data protection addendum states explicitly that Microsoft will not use customer data to derive information for advertising or similar commercial purposes. These are stated policies, and Microsoft is a large company with significant legal exposure if those policies are violated. But stated policies are only one dimension of data risk. The other dimension is breach risk. Infrastructure that stores data is infrastructure that can be compromised. Microsoft has experienced significant security incidents in recent years. In 2023, Chinese state-sponsored hackers accessed Microsoft email systems and read emails from senior U.S. government officials and Microsoft executives. In 2024, a Microsoft security breach was described by the U.S. Cyber Safety Review Board as having a cascade of security failures. These are documented events involving Microsoft's own infrastructure. A system that collects file samples from hundreds of millions of Windows PCs is a system that contains data of interest to sophisticated adversaries. No policy statement changes the risk that comes from having that data stored in centralized cloud infrastructure. Let us also acknowledge something else that deserves honest discussion. Microsoft's legal obligations mean that in certain jurisdictions, under certain legal processes, data that Microsoft holds may be subject to government access. This is true of virtually all major U.S. technology companies. Microsoft, like Google, Apple, and others, receives legal demands for user data, and when those demands are legally valid, must comply. If file samples or metadata from your machine are held by Microsoft's cloud service, and if law enforcement presents a valid legal demand for that data, Microsoft has obligations it must fulfill. For the vast majority of ordinary users doing ordinary things, this is not a relevant concern. No law enforcement agency is interested in the executable files on their personal PCs, but for journalists, activists, researchers, lawyers, and others working in sensitive areas, the fact that their files, or metadata about their files, reside in Microsoft's cloud infrastructure, subject to potential legal process, is not a comfortable situation. This is why privacy-sensitive professionals often do not use cloud-connected antivirus features at all. They use offline antivirus solutions, or they use solutions where the vendor's legal jurisdiction and data handling practices are specifically considered and evaluated for their threat model. This is not paranoia, It is appropriate professional practice for people whose work involves protecting sensitive information. Now, let us also address something that helps explain why most people have never heard about any of this. Microsoft has been very deliberate about how these features are presented in Windows Security's user interface. The Windows Security app is designed to be reassuring. The green check marks are prominent. The warning messages when you turn something off are written in alarming language. Your device may be vulnerable. Automatic sample submission is off. Your device may be vulnerable. These warnings are technically accurate. Disabling these features does reduce certain protections, but they are also written in a way that makes the average user feel scared and reverse their changes. The user experience design of Windows Security systematically discourages users from turning off the features that send data to Microsoft. Consider what the interface would look like if it were designed with different priorities. Imagine if turning off automatic sample submission produced a message that said, "You have turned off file uploads to Microsoft. Your local antivirus remains fully active." This change means that files on your computer will no longer be automatically sent to Microsoft's servers for analysis. You may be slightly less protected against brand new threats that have not yet been cataloged in Defender's local database. This is your choice to make. That would be an honest, balanced description of what you just did. Instead, "Your device may be vulnerable" is what you get, designed to make you put the setting back where it was. This user interface design choice reflects a consistent pattern across Windows. Features that benefit Microsoft's data collection and cloud services are promoted, protected with alarming warnings when turned off, and explained in technical language that discourages engagement. Features that give users genuine privacy, that reduce what is sent to Microsoft, are buried, presented as risky, and surrounded by interface friction. This pattern is not unique to Defender. It is visible across Windows settings, across the Windows setup process, and across how Microsoft communicates about privacy features generally. Understanding this pattern helps you approach the settings with appropriate skepticism. When a settings change produces a scary warning message, ask yourself, scary for whom? Scary because you are genuinely making your PC less safe? Or scary because you're sending Microsoft less data? In the case of automatic sample submission, the answer is both. You are making a genuine security trade-off. But the framing of the warning emphasizes only the security downside, completely omitting that you're also gaining something: control over what files leave your PC. Let us do a final summary of the exact steps to take, because clarity matters here. Open Windows Security from your Start menu, go to Virus and Threat Protection, click Manage Settings, find Automatic Sample Submission and toggle it off. This stops Defender from uploading files from your PC to Microsoft servers for cloud analysis. You will see a warning that your device may be vulnerable. This is expected. Your local antivirus protection remains fully active. While you are on that same settings page, also look at the Cloud Delivered Protection toggle directly above Automatic Sample Submission. Review the trade-off described in this video and decide whether you want to leave Cloud Delivered Protection on for real-time threat intelligence while disabling file uploads, or whether you want to disable Cloud Delivered Protection entirely. The balanced approach for most users is to turn off Automatic Sample Submission while leaving Cloud Delivered Protection on. Then go to App and Browser Control in Windows Security. Click Reputation-Based Protection Settings. Review the Smart Screen toggles. The most significant from a privacy standpoint is Check Apps and Files. This controls whether Windows sends file paths and download URLs to Microsoft when you execute downloaded files. Decide whether the URL and file path transmission is something you want to continue based on your personal situation. Go to your Windows Diagnostic Data settings separately. This is under Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Diagnostics and Feedback. Switch from optional to required if you have not done so already. This is a separate system from Defender's own cloud features and limits a separate data collection channel. After making these changes, your PC will run with significantly reduced data transmission to Microsoft while maintaining strong protection against known threats through Defender's local engine. You will be operating with informed awareness of the trade-offs involved, which is the position everyone using Windows should be in, and which the default Windows experience does not put you in. That is the truth about Microsoft Defender. Not that it is malicious, not that it is secretly trying to harm you, but that it sends significantly more data to Microsoft than most people realize, that the defaults favor data transmission over privacy, and that the tools to change this exist, but are not prominently surfaced. Now you know. Now you can decide. And now for a moment of perspective that is genuinely important, because this video has covered a lot of ground, and you may be sitting there feeling alarmed. That alarm is understandable, but it needs to be calibrated correctly. Microsoft Defender, with all of its cloud features intact, is still one of the best antivirus programs available for ordinary home users. Independent testing organizations like AV Test and AV comparatives consistently rate Defender at the top tier of antivirus effectiveness, equal to or better than many expensive third-party alternatives. The cloud protection features and even the automatic sample submission system are part of what makes Defender genuinely excellent at stopping malware. The people at Microsoft who built these features were solving a real problem. Modern malware is polymorphic, targeted, and unique. Stopping it requires real-time global intelligence. The engineering solution they built works. The issue is not the engineering. The issue is the disclosure. The issue is that a product used by billions of people implements data transmission that affects those people's privacy. And the implementation of that data transmission has consistently prioritized security outcomes and cloud intelligence goals over user awareness and informed consent. A feature that sends your files to a company's servers should be something you actively choose, with clear understanding of what you're choosing, not something that runs by default while the user experience buries the explanation in documentation that nobody reads. This is a principle that applies beyond just Microsoft and beyond just antivirus software. Every major technology platform, operating systems, browsers, phones, apps, makes decisions about what data to collect and transmit. The responsible approach is to make those decisions transparent, to surface them clearly to users, and to default toward privacy rather than toward data collection. That principle is worth standing behind regardless of which company's product you are evaluating. When you share this information with someone, and please do share it, because this is genuinely information that matters, resist the temptation to frame it as Microsoft is bad, or Windows is spying on you. Neither of those framings is accurate, and inaccurate framings discredit the real and legitimate concern. The accurate framing is, Microsoft Defender has features that most people don't know about. Those features send data to Microsoft servers, and you have the right to know about them and to configure them according to your own values and needs. That is a framing that is both true and useful. It empowers people to take action without creating misunderstanding. The broader lesson here is about defaults. Defaults are the most powerful design decision in any piece of software because defaults are what happens for everyone who never changes anything. And most people never change anything. If you design defaults that favor data collection, you collect data from the vast majority of users who trust that the default is appropriate and never look deeper. If you design defaults that favor privacy, you protect the vast majority of users, even if a minority actively choose to enable more data sharing features. The defaults in Windows Defender favor data collection. That is the decision Microsoft has made. Now you know it. And knowing it gives you the power to set your own default. Your device, your files, your data, your decision. Make it the right one for you, because nobody else is going to make it on your behalf, and the default was never designed with your privacy as the first priority.